Hello, and welcome to the Student Ministry Conversations podcast with your hosts, Brent Aiken, David Pruitt, and Russell Martin. This podcast is all about equipping, encouraging, and inspiring youth pastors weekly with topics that are brought to the table by youth pastors from all over the world. And now, here's your host for this week, David Pruitt.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. If this is your first time listening to us, we want to welcome you and invite you over to our website, www.studentministryconversations.org, where you can find all of our previous episodes, show notes, blog articles, and much more. Our goal is that you are inspired, encouraged, and the things that you hear on this podcast would equip you to be a better student pastor for the church that you are serving in. All right, let's get to it. So this is my buddy Josh Green. He is the student pastor out at Colonial Hill Baptist Church right here in Snyder, Texas. And I gotta say, this is the third take. We actually recorded this entire episode, and it wasn't until a month later that we realized that we didn't get any of Josh's. And so that's the most important part. So we tried to re-record this morning and had the same issue, but on my end. And so take three, buddy. Take three.
Love it. Glad to be here.
Yeah, man. Do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I actually grew up in Snyder. I graduated in 2003, which means I'm really old, especially to be a student pastor. But hopefully there's some wisdom with that. I suppose you can be the judge of that by the end of the episode. But graduated in 2003, went to Bible college, and then I started full-time ministry in August of 2006. Spent about 13 years in Odessa. I like to call that my dark years. I love it. I'm thankful for it, but I don't want to go back. Learned a ton, but I've been back in Snyder for the last 5 years since August of 2019. I have a beautiful wife it'll be 19 years in May. We have 6 kids. Our oldest is a daughter. She's 32, and that is obviously awkward. We adopted her when she was 15. She also has 2 little girls, so we have 2 grandkids. I was actually a granddad before the age of 30. And then we have 5 boys in our home, 2nd grade to 12th grade, and 2 of those we fostered and adopted, and 3 of those boys are biological. And so we're full-time ministry. My wife's in the process of starting a women's home here in Snyder, and kids play sports, going 9-0, but we absolutely love it, and just feel really blessed in this season of life.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think it's safe to say that your household, your ministry is quite busy.
Yeah.
And so today, that is actually what we are talking about. We're going to be marching through this incredible book called The Ruthless, Elimination of Hurry. The funny story of how all this came about, I was getting books and senior gifts for Senior Sunday last year. So this would have been 2023. And I happened to see this book on the recommended kind of bookshelf over by the Bibles. And the thing that caught me, honestly, was bright colors and clean typography. As a graphic designer, that is all it takes for me to get a little bit excited. And so I was like, I didn't know who this guy was. I didn't know anything about the book, but it just screamed at me. And so my wife thought it would make a really great senior gift, but God had other thoughts in mind. I knew instantly this was a book I needed to read. So I'd like to say that I instantly took it home and started reading it. But like a really, really good procrastinator, I waited till January. So May to January, you do the math. It was clear I needed to eliminate the hurry in my life. But once I opened the book, I couldn't put it down. And as a person with ADHD and dyslexia, that is a gift. So, to say in the least. So I fell in love with this book. Lots of highlights and underlines and side notes, and man, it was just such a good book. So after one of the junior high FCAs, Josh and I were hanging out in his truck and just talking, and I happened to mention this book, and he was like, man, I love that book, and I've read the whole thing, and man, I'd love to talk to you about it. And I got to tell you, Josh is one of those guys that truly exhibits what it means to have a good, healthy work balance, which blows my mind because I am the exact opposite. So, really, really excited about going through this book together. Before we do that, I wanted to start with the passage that he opens the book up with, which should be familiar to us. It's Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. And it says this: "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Man, that alone tells you exactly where we need to go with this. I don't know about you guys that are listening, but every time I come across this verse, I just think, amen. Like, I'm so tired all the time. But man, we don't rest in the presence of God the way that we should. One more thing I'll add, and then we'll get to the questions. I love the definition of hurry that is in the foreword of this book, and it says this: hurry involves excessive haste or a state of urgency. It is often associated with words such as hurdle, uproar, and hurricane. It's a state of frantic effort one falls into in response to inadequacy, fear, and guilt. Man, when you think about ministry, so many of us just live there, feeling like we're not good enough, fear that we're going to upset a student or upset a parent or upset our pastor or whatever it might be. So many of us can live in that. And then even just the guilt. Let's be honest, youth ministry is synonymous with broken tables and broken TVs and things that are expensive and important. And so there's a lot of guilt that can come with that too. And so that kind of just leads to the first question. In a culture like ours, that wears hurry, busyness as basically a badge of honor. Josh, do you think that hurry really is a bad thing?
Yes. So I heard a quote before that said, "It's not wrong to be busy, but it is wrong to have a busy soul." And I think that's where it gets different, because there's going to be seasons in your life that are busier than other seasons, and there's going to be even maybe short stints in your life where you're kind of maybe even running at unsustainable pace. But that can't be your forever. You know what I'm saying? And I think it gets really dangerous when you're characterized by hurry and busy, and that's not just a short season. That it tends to be your life. I think that's dangerous, because when your soul is busy, that almost always equals like a unhealthy spiritual life, which we know would be the most important thing about somebody. So this idea of hurry is obviously a problem, but also, like you said, it's kind of it almost makes you feel good if you are busy, and you feel guilty if you're not busy, which again is kind of like, that's kind of the wrong way to even view it in the first place. So yes, I think it's an issue, and I don't think it's just like, even if you just cleared your calendar, you can still be busy. You know, you can still be distracted and and not present, and all these other unhealthy things. Like you probably need to fix your calendar, but at the same time, you really got to deal with the issues of your soul and why it's so hurried and why it can't rest and why you can't really rest in the Lord, like you said in the beginning.
Forgot to unmute my mic. I could just get lost in listening to you and all the wisdom that you have, man. We'll pretend like it was that, not my own stupidity. Man, when I think about this book and what it really means, man, I think you're absolutely right. It's one of those things where hurry itself isn't necessarily bad inherently. It's the way that we respond to the things in our life. I mean, let's be completely honest. If you're in full-time ministry and you have a spouse and you have kids, there's no way that you couldn't be busy and in a hurry. There are times, and then there's times where you're sitting around going, God, please give me something to do. I'm bored out of my mind. Those seem few and far in between, if I'm being completely honest. But at the same time, hurry is something that has essentially kind of come into like a place of like hurry sickness. And he talks about that in the book. Could you just kind of walk us through that process, like from your experience? Like, what does hurry sickness look like to you?
Um, I know for me, so my work week Sunday through Thursday, and then we get Friday, Saturday off. And Saturday is kind of a catch-all, especially with kids' sports and just events and parties and whatever else. Like there's always something on Saturday. But I really try to protect Friday to unplug. And so, like for me, I'm going 9 to nothing, Sunday through Thursday pretty consistently, And even if, my work day may end at 5, but like there's still all kinds of stuff to do that evening with my family and with the, like I said, the maternity home and some of those things that we're talking. There's always something else to do. And so, like Sunday through Thursday, I'm pretty booked, and I can pretty much tell you where I'm going to be before the day ever happens. Like whatever I have to do and accomplish. But I really try to protect Friday and unplug, and I say no to some really good things on Friday just because I know if I skip those Fridays, I might be okay for a week or two. But if I continue that pace and I don't unplug, it really gets to a point of like not just irritability and grumpiness and short fuse, like for sure those things, but also it really messes with my soul and like my even desire to want to be around people and my desire to really want to pursue God personally. Like it messes everything up on the inside, which then results in all these broken things on the outside. So for me, like the hurry sickness is like, it's not necessarily that I didn't have a busy week, but it's like that there's a very good balance between my work and my rest, and it's a both and, not an either or, right? So I'm not excessively resting and just unplugging and taking a break, but I'm also not excessively working and never taking a break. I'm trying to figure out how to weave that in. When I don't is when I feel that hurry sickness. When I do those things, the hurry is hurry, but like I'm more balanced, I'm more present, I'm more calm, like I'm more in tune with the Holy Spirit. Like I'm actually living the life God's called me to live, as long as I really do a good job balancing work and rest.
Man, that honestly to me seems so hard. And what's funny is, and we talked about this a little bit the first time we we had this conversation. Um, I don't exactly know when it happened, but I found myself being jealous in a sense of people like you who had found this level of balance in their life, because it felt like no matter how hard I tried, I was always busy with something. And I say was, like I things have gotten better, but I mean, when we first had this conversation, I couldn't even consider having a day off. I mean, it's 7 days a week, full, you know, pedal to the metal kind of thing. And I want to make it clear that is partially my problem, because where I messed up a long, long, long time ago is that I'm the kind of guy that wants to serve as many people as possible. And it's not like I think that I'm just like invincible or anything. It's just that I don't know how to say no. Um, and truthfully, I guess as like a people pleaser and a person with a servant heart, I think my greatest gifts can easily become my biggest weaknesses when I don't know how to say no. And so, looking for balance in life, it came down to this. And what I began realizing through reading this book and having conversations with trusted friends like you is that every time I say no to something, I'm saying I have the opportunity to say yes to something more effectively. And then, kind of the other way of it, every time I say yes to something means that I have to say no to something else. And too often, the thing that actually takes the brunt of that is our family. And so for every yes that I give in the community, and I could over spiritualize it to death, really, and say, well, but I'm doing it for God. I'm doing it in His name, and I might actually be doing good. But if it comes at a place where I'm sacrificing my family and my own mental health, physical health, spiritual health, I'm no good for everybody forever, and at some point you burn out and you begin to not only mess up one or two things, that one or two things becomes three or four or five or six.
Well, what I found too is like you said, like sometimes you have to say no to good things to say yes to great things. We've all heard that quote before, and that's true. It's sometimes hard to discern what those good and great things are. But what I found is it's very freeing for me to kind of just say, hey, before the day ever happens, or before the week ever happens, I'm really trying to protect this time to kind of rest and unplug. And then I'm kind of filling in the time everywhere else to get the things done that I need to get done. Because as you know, ministry is going to be there no matter if we show up to work or not. Like, ministry never stops. So whether or not you take a day off, the question is not, is there something else to do? Is there somebody else to serve? Is there somewhere else you need to be? The answer is always yes to that. And so the question then becomes, well, then how do I really protect myself and get myself as spiritually healthy as possible so that I can really, for the long haul, for hopefully, I want to be faithful to the end of my life. I want to finish well. And so, like, even my work and rest, it's about my mental health now, but I'm really thinking of myself 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. Like, I want to be as healthy as possible for as long as possible so I can be as effective as long as I possibly can. Not only that, but what I found is that I have the ability and maybe even the discipline to not take days off, and I can maybe accomplish the tasks that need to be done by like my creativity and my vision and like my desire and my want to, and some of the stuff that's intangible, that starts to wane really fast and it becomes more of a duty than a delight. And so but when I rest, what I find, one way I know I've rested well is when my mind starts dreaming again about what could be and where we need to go. So we were actually at the Orange Conference last week, and it was like part conference, part kind of like vacation with my wife and Josh and Leadon, our student minister, and his wife. But man, even like on the flight and just as we're driving and as we're eating good food, and I'm like beginning to dream again. Like, it's like we actually unplugged, removed ourselves, and like I could feel that refilling coming up, And so again, you have to balance, but I'm thinking through this in a like daily, I want to get enough sleep. I want to get enough water. I want to be wise. I want to exercise. I want to take care of my body daily. Weekly, I want to work and rest. Monthly, I'm trying to unplug and do some different things. A couple times a year, we're getting away on vacations or conferences or retreats or whatever, and that's tends to be spiritually refreshing. But I'm thinking about it in all those different ways because I want to be healthy over the long haul and really be faithful now and through the next few, through the years of my ministry. So,
for sure, man. And I think you said that really well, especially when you think about like sort of the fogginess that comes with no matter how busy we are. Like, it seems like the busier we are, the less we eat, the less we take care of ourselves, and ultimately I am physically showing you what happens when you don't eat or sleep, because I have not slept in a couple of days. And so the fogginess that comes with that can really affect, and when you talked about dreaming again, man, I could tell you some of the days where it just felt like days become weeks and weeks become months, and it seems like this like long busy season, and all this it's almost like you're spending more time trying to catch up than you are just breathing in the fresh air of what's going on around you.
yeah, you're not swimming, you're treading water, just trying to keep your face above water to breathe. Like, you're not thriving, you're surviving. Like, but again, when you get those work and rest, like, you can really get these rhythms where there's some thriving going on, and it's not always just survival mode. Sometimes in ministry, I'm doing everything I should do and I'm surviving. I feel like that with May coming up. Like, dude, May is pretty... Honestly, spring is worse than fall. Spring, this whole semester has been an absolute
100%.
I honestly find myself looking forward to summer, which is crazy because summer's always nuts. You know what I mean? So
I will say it feels like, and you've been in ministry long enough to understand this, that it feels like this has been the most, like, there's always that sort of right after Valentine's Day, like literally the day after Valentine's Day, you start to see that spring decline. And like we all have the metrics and the data um, up until COVID, and then all of a sudden COVID just completely wrecked everything that we thought we knew. But this year felt like the first year since COVID where things sort of got back to normal. Except now everybody seems like they're all in because we've all just sort of been like waiting with bated breath on whether or not like something was going to shut us down again. And it seems like this year everyone goes, okay, great. No matter what happens, we're just going to stay all in on this thing. And so this seems like the busiest spring semester that I can remember.
you going into ministry, I always assumed, especially West Texas, that fall would be way worse than spring. It's football, it's volleyball, and then I got here and my whole worldview crashed pretty quick. Like when you have track and one act and stock shows on top of everything else, like
Baseball.
it's just baseball. I spent more time at extracurriculars this spring than I ever have because I've got kids in junior high and high school in track, and those take forever.
Yeah.
And so it's just like you're pretty much constantly running around like a chicken with your head cut off. And so again, even more reason to be preemptive and to really protect certain pockets of time to make sure you're doing some self-care. What I found is people feel guilty for doing self-care, and I think that if you're doing it excessively or at the detriment of your responsibilities or something, but like when you're really doing self-care and resting well, like you're not only serving yourself, you really are serving. Nobody wants to be around me if I don't take days off. I'm super irritable, right? Like it really messes with me. So like me doing self-care really is a blessing to my wife. It's a blessing to my kids. And so like, and I honestly think it honors God. He obviously put that pattern in there, like he creates and then he rests. Like he's woven this into creation. So as we like when we don't rest, we're almost like saying, God, you don't know what you're doing. I've got this. Like that. We're not saying that, but we're kind of living like that. Like we're not saying it with our words, but we're saying it with our lives. And then when we do rest, it's like, man, this feels so good. And God's like, it's almost like I designed it that way, And it's like, it makes sense. It makes sense,
No, that's one of my favorite things about having conversations with you is two things always happens. I leave much better off than when I came, and I always laugh. There's always some kind of funny joke or old emo reference to a metal song that you and I will talk about, and then we just laugh, and it's great. I mean, right? We laugh, we leave wiser. Like, come on, come on. Not gonna lie, I played the stand today, like on my guitar, just jamming. Um, we were thinking about some old school songs, Ryan and I, our pastor, and we decided to bust out. Let's see if you remember this one. You Are God Alone. Phillips Craig and Dean made it popular, but it was Billy and Cindy Foote that wrote it. Yeah, was like, yep, we're pulling that back out on Sunday. Why not? Have some fun with it. I mean, isn't that the point of youth ministry, friendship, ADHD people. That's like my life, dude. Oh man, but kind of getting us back to where we were, you're talking about the importance of slowing down, but also the importance of discerning what is actually great over what is good. Can you talk about that? How do we discern what is actually the most important thing? Like, what's the great things and what are the good things that is okay to sacrifice?
Well, I think it's because it's potentially a really deep conversation, but I think it probably has to do with your gifting and calling, because like I can't sing, I fake play the guitar, but like that's not my primary gifting and calling. You know what I'm saying? Like you're amazing at that. Praise God. We need more guys like that. But so like I don't need to be prioritizing music as a main part of my ministry. That's not really my gifting. And so for me it's really trying to figure out exactly like what is my lane and how can I run, as fast and effective and as far in that lane as I possibly can. Like so for me right now, it's youth ministry, so 6th through 12th grade. That's my actual job, and then obviously my wife and kids are highest priority right next to God. But then also my wife has like the Sparrow's Nest, which is a maternity home that we're launching, and so that requires some time and effort. In fact, I was late to this conversation because we were doing some Sparrow's Nest stuff, like hauling some stuff out there. And so like those kind of three things are kind of my primary filter for what I say yes to. So like I've said yes to good, like back in the day, we the youth pastor around here used to talk about getting breakfast on Friday, and I would say no, and I was absolutely free. I was just trying to protect my Fridays and unplug and really take care of myself. It had nothing to do with anything else. Like I had to say no to something that would have been good to do what I really felt like God was calling me to do. And so like again, what I do is Sunday through Thursday, the majority of those daytime hours are spent doing youth ministry related stuff. Sometimes in the evening, it's Sparrow's Nest, but that's really sporadic. That's not like a scheduled thing. But most of the time, my evenings are with my wife and kids, and we're spending time together. And so, again, not that I don't do other stuff, but I really just kind of think through those main lenses. And I've grown in saying no to things, but I think that's where the conversation could go deeper, because there's a reason why you're saying yes to certain things. And for a lot of us, I think that can get into like you said earlier, like you feel like you need validation, or it just feels good to be wanted or needed sometimes. Or there's a host of really deep things that could lead us to say yes to good things, but really don't fall in line with our primary gifting or calling in this season of our life. And you might can do that sometimes, but if you're consumed by that or it's overwhelming, it's really going to set you on an unsustainable pace. And I've only really seen people crash and burn when they neglect working and resting well for a long period of time. Like I don't really see benefit from that, because I think it goes outside God's design for how it designed the world to work. And when you live like that, it tends to lead toward darkness. And then when you walk in God's design, it tends to lead toward fruits of the Spirit and some of the joy that Jesus talks about. And so, like, I don't even know if that answers the question. That was so generic, but, like, I'm pretty simple in my life. It's busy, but, like, it's those three things,
But I think that's the point. We try to add more and more things. And for me, I think it comes down to I have this like perpetual imposter syndrome in all aspects of my life. It doesn't matter how many compliments or praise or whatever that people will give you. Like for me, the main things that I get complimented on is um, art, music, youth ministry, especially when it comes to like one-on-one relationships with people, just having a big heart for people. And that's all good and fine. Well, I don't know about that. Well, I'm leaving, so hey, that job is open to whoever wants it. But man, I think that might be you. I don't know. We're all pretty chill and pretty nice people. So it's like, and I'm not just saying that, like we really do have a great group of youth pastors in our town, and that community is definitely something I'm going to miss because where I'm going doesn't have that. And so looks like it's time to build a new one. But I guess where I'm going with that is just in all of that imposter syndrome. It's like I feel like I have to take on more because the more that I can offer, the less risk, I guess, that I run into in failing. And in our world and our culture is so like afraid to fail. And what's funny is like I'm not afraid to fail, but I'm afraid to look bad. And I don't even know why I care. You know what I mean? Like, and I think, you know, I'd like to say it's because I just have such a deep reverence for God that I don't want to mess it up. And that's certainly the case. But I think if I were to be really like pressed and God were to look at me, and I believe like God has x-ray vision, and he can see through all that stuff, God would look at me and say, is it really out of reverence for me, or is it out of vanity for how you perceive the people around you and the people that you care about actually seeing you? And so how do we break through that mold of like sort of the imposter syndrome side of it and just learning how to be more simple, kind of like strip it down?
I don't know. The first thing that comes to my mind is I did a lot of reading. I still try to read quite a bit, but I did a lot of reading my first 10 to 15 years in ministry. And I read a lot of books on like identity in Christ and those things, mainly because everybody struggles with that, I think. Like it's just kind of a universal human problem. We're trying to find our identity, our worth, our value, and we want something to give us that. Now, we know the Sunday school answer is that God is the one who gives us our value, dignity, and worth in the utmost, most satisfying, most God-glorifying way. Like it's what's best for us. But we easily substitute and exchange Him for other things, lesser things, and the end result is they always don't satisfy. But that doesn't mean that our bent is still not to do that. Like constantly, like the old hymn, our hearts are prone to wonder. Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. So I think about this a lot lately. If left to myself, almost all my desires and decisions go to selfishness. It is an act of the Spirit for me to actually die to myself and actually live the life He's called me to live. And that also comes along with a ton of failure because I don't feel like dying to myself. I don't feel like being selfless. I want to be the sinner. And so through a bunch of study and just like, even kind of like you're doing as we talk, like you're really assessing your heart very well. I don't think that's super common amongst all people, especially men. We don't tend to really evaluate our heart consistently or even well. And so like for me, as I have learned to do that, what I have learned is that I'm going to try to put my identity, my worth, my value somewhere. And what I've found is the more I really attach that to God Himself, it really helps me rest. Like I don't have anything to prove. Like, there's no way, if my ministry triples in size, God's love is the same. If I shrink this thing and kill it, God's love for me is the same. Like, God's love for me is not based on how well that I perform. And so, like, just in really the scriptures and studying and learning, and then my constant kind of just failure, then self-evaluation, then kind of figuring out, I'm really learning that, like, for me to rest not only honors God, but, like, it leads to more fruit than what my efforts can bring in the first place. And so like my work is better when I rest. My life is better when I rest. God is more honored when I rest. Like all these things only point to what's good. And also when I unplug, it kind of forces me to entrust the ministry to God. It's like at the end of the day, it's not my ministry. It's not my life. It's not my family. Like it's my job to steward what God has given me. And so for me to actually unplug and to take a break really is an act of saying, God, I trust you. It is in your hands. Do with it as you see fit. Like, grow me, rest me, refill me. Lord, fill me up so that I can go again this next week and pour myself back out. And so, like, that's kind of how I think about it is like, if I'm really doing this to have a platform or to be seen as awesome, like, I've missed the gospel. The whole point of the gospel is that we can't do it. The whole point of the gospel is that we're so sinful, Jesus had to die, but we're so loved that he was willing to die. That's Tim Keller, right? Like I've learned so much from that guy. But for me to be arrogant about that, or to use ministry as a platform to promote myself, is just an absolute misunderstanding of the gospel, and it just really shows a brokenness here. And so I'm always trying to evaluate and keep a really good pulse on my heart and where I'm at, because I know if I don't keep a pulse on that, I'm not headed toward godliness. I'm headed toward selfishness and destruction. And so I've got to constantly come back and focus. I wake up most mornings and start with black coffee and the Bible, because what else is better than those two things early in the morning when my house is quiet, the kids are asleep. But I don't do that. I suppose I do that sometimes to check it off my list. I hope I don't, but I've gotten to the point where I crave that time. I want to be in the Word. I want that quietness. And a lot of it, man, sometimes I'm falling asleep, right? Sometimes it's boring, if I'm just being honest. And sometimes, man, it's so Holy Spirit saturated that I know He's there with me. But doesn't matter how it was this morning. I'm going to wake up tomorrow and do it again. I'm going to continue to pursue God, because ultimately rest is found in Him. And my identity is rooted in Him. And everything that I want down deep is really found in Him. So I'm going to pursue Him, and I'm going to go to the well tomorrow again, and I'm going to drink deeply from it, and then I'm going to live my life and try to live according to what God's called me to do. And I'm going to work as hard as I can this week for His honor and His glory. And then Friday, I'm going to unplug, and it is what it is. And then we'll figure it out on Saturday. And I'm going to keep doing that until God tells me to do something else, I suppose. So I don't know.
Oh, for sure, man. And I think that's it. I mean, again, I feel like it comes back down to we way overcomplicate it. And I really liked what you said, that it doesn't matter if we're super successful or this whole thing burns to the ground. God's love is still the same. And I think sometimes we can get so caught up. And for me, it's not even really the platform of it all, because I really can't stand the spotlight. I hate it, actually. And God naturally puts me in it, and I fight against it as often as I can. But I never feel like I'm good enough to be in His presence. And the funny thing is, how often do we preach that it's not about that, but yet sometimes we're the world's worst at actually accepting the very thing that we're preaching, right? And so that reminder that God's love is the same regardless. And so it comes down to, are you willing to just do the uncomfortable thing and serve God where you're at, even when you don't feel like you have it? And then, of course, finding the balance in all of that. For sure. So I guess in wrapping up this incredible conversation, I feel like we can go for days and days and days. I guess that's why people write books on this stuff. But what would you say, or maybe even some advice that you give someone? So I guess to put this in the simplest terms I can, if you're the guy that has arrived in this idea of eliminating hurry, and the guy who's still journeying, and I'm not saying that you don't still have lots of journey or that you're perfect or anything, but when it comes to eliminating hurry, I don't know anybody in my world, my walk, who is a better example of actually walking this out than you. And that's something that I really have just been so encouraged in our conversations. How do you go from this to that?
I think part of it's clarifying some values. I think of it like this: I can't do everything, I can't be everything, and so who does God call me to be? And it kind of goes back to man, I've got a wife and a bunch of kids, and so I have to have energy and be present. I have a full-time job that really is dealing with ministry. They need me to put in everything that I can to love and serve and bless the people that God's entrusted to us. We have some other ministries that we're messing with, and man, God can really potentially use that. And so Like for me, I've kind of clarified my values. And so then it's like, so if I'm going to do those things, I've got to be pursuing God. Um, I exercise 5 or 6 days a week, and I don't always feel like exercising. Sometimes I feel great and I love it. A lot of times I'm doing it because I know that my body, my mind, my soul are all interconnected. And if I take care of my soul and I'm doing a good job renewing my mind and I'm really trying to take care of my body and I'm trying to drink enough water, like those things all work together and make the other ones better. And so I really am trying to protect, like, I am getting enough sleep. I am waking up and really trying to put myself under the waterfall of grace and just be in God's presence as best I can. I am trying to work out 5 or 6 days a week. I'm trying to really work hard and prioritize my hours and use them as best I possibly can so that I'm not doing a ton of work in the evening, so I can be present with my wife and kids during the weekdays and then really enjoy the weekends with them. I work really hard Sunday through Thursday so that when I unplug on Friday, Saturday, it's not like I have a lot of loose ends. It's like, I've handled some responsibility, and so now I can, move forward and really enjoy the presence of my kids and do silly stuff and fun stuff. And so, like, if I could say one thing, like, you got to kind of figure out your values and who God's calling you to be. And then I would start small. I think a lot of times we like think, okay, this week I'm going to make every change that I need to make. And I think that's always unrealistic. I would start small, like go to bed on time. Your sleep isn't just how long you slept, but it tends to be like your wind down routine in the evening. And if you can get better at winding down, you might get a better quality of sleep. And if you get a better quality of sleep and have more energy, it may empower you to do more things during the day. But if you really do feel bad all day, it's hard to get motivated sometimes. So like something as simple as like really be mindful about how you go to sleep and try to get 7 or 8 hours of sleep. If you're not exercising, you may start. Again, I would start very small and just getting some steps in. Move your body. If you don't drink water, I would encourage drinking water. I actually coach nutrition on the side, and you wouldn't believe how many people don't sleep, don't drink water, and don't really move that much. Like they're not sleeping, they're not moving, like, and they don't feel good. And it's like you begin to do some of these things, and it really has a profound impact. I think you need to look through your calendar and find some time to really unplug. And then we didn't even get into this, but like unplugging for me may be different than what unplugging for you looks like. Like you got to do things that really refresh your soul and that you enjoy, and make sure that your day off isn't just a day filled with something like binging Netflix. And then at the end of the day, you feel worse than normal because you hadn't really connected with God and done anything that's really life-giving for you. That Friday really is about refilling your soul and doing things that invigorate your life, and that could look like a lot of different things. So again, I don't think I answered any of your questions. I think I've danced around it. I would find one thing and start small is what I would do. And there's a host of things to choose from, but start somewhere and then do that for a week. And then if that becomes a little easier, add a new habit to it, and then do that for a week and keep building those good habits that are getting you where you need to go.
For sure. And I will throw this out there. You answered every one of my questions beautifully and expanded on them in incredible ways. So, and you're so right. Like if we spend all of our Friday binging Netflix or watching movies or whatever, you're absolutely right. What will happen, especially as you get older, is you're going to get sort of that whole couch potato thing where like your whole body aches, even though you did literally nothing. But then imagine you go hike a trail, or if you're blessed to have mountains around you, we are not, but you're blessed to have that, and being able to like summit a crazy cool peak and getting up to the top of that and just looking down and seeing like all that you've accomplished, the feeling and the rush that comes with that. Like one of the things I would love to do right now, and it's like this dream, really two things for me. I really want to go kayaking, and it doesn't have to be like a crazy river. I just want to go kayaking. Like the Buffalo River in Arkansas just seems like the most perfect place. I want to grill there. I want to camp there. I want to go kayaking. And then the other thing I want to do is take a bullet train from Denver, Colorado to, I forgot the city that it is, but it's basically through like the Smoky Mountains where it's like, I say Smoky, but like the, like in December or whatever, like when it's like snowy mountains and you're just there. And both times I want to take this incredible espresso maker. Okay, I'm going to nerd out here for a second. Called the Pico Presso, and it's literally a manual espresso maker, and you can make it anywhere you want. That sounds so silly to a lot of people, but like to me, that sounds so fun. Like I get so much life out of making really good coffee, and then drinking that coffee while hanging out with my wife who's reading a book. That's life, and like that seems like such a dream, and I'm so busy that I can't even imagine carving out that kind of time to go. But it's a simple thing if you really think about it, like going and floating a river and getting on a train through the mountains. That shouldn't be hard, but I make it hard.
Well, one thing that I love that absolutely refreshes my soul, my wife doesn't understand it at all, but me and my boys play Call of Duty together in our front living room. And like we're all in the same squad, and like, dude, sometimes we just get obliterated, but dude, there's sometimes we have good games and we win, and when we get that last kill, we jump up and we're chest bumping and we're like running through the house. Dude, it really is amazing. And so like on the weekends, Friday, Saturday especially, like I'm really like I try to carve some time out for that if I can, you know, and if I play, it's almost always with my boys or some friends or whatever, and it's one of my favorite things ever. So it's just fun. And I think that honors God to have fun and enjoy life. So
right, it's like we know this, but we're not getting any of this time back. And that's really the thing that we need to understand. And I know I've said this in previous podcasts and stuff, but like the greatest gift that God gives us besides the sun is time. It's the one thing that we can never get back, and it's the one thing that we can't create more of. And yet we waste it so easily. And it usually takes like the death of somebody or something terribly tragic to wake us up for like a day, and then we go right back to our dumb routines. And so it's like, if this is what we love doing, then just go do it. It's good. And I think you're right. God designed us to have fun and to be refreshed and to enjoy the creation in which he blessed us with. So, Josh, thank you so much for your time for a third day. But man, dude, I couldn't appreciate you more. Staying up late with us. It is like 8 p.m., which is way too stinking late for you to be away from your family, especially when you are old. I had to throw it out there. Josh is the oldest youth pastor in town, and I love it.
it's like you aged out.
Nah, dude. When I think of some of the most incredible youth pastors, I think of those guys that are like, I can't remember his name, but he was at, I think he's still there at the Woodlands Church, and he's been there for like 28, 30 years or something. He's like in his 60s, and obviously he's not the only one, but he's got a whole team around him. But like, that's my dream, like youth ministry for life. Oh man. Yeah, man. So thank you guys so much for listening. We hope that you got something out of our TED Talk for the day. We would be so honored if you would share our podcast with your youth pastor friends on social media, or tag a specific episode that just really stood out to you or just meant something to you. If you learned something, share it on your favorite platform by using @TalkStudentMen. Finally, if you would like to be on the show in the future, please reach out to us on social media or send us an email to podcast@studentministryconversations.org. We would absolutely love to set up a time for you to join us. But until then, have a great week, and we will catch you guys on the next one.
See ya.